back?
Yeah, 3.5.
And you started Shadi.com, what, 15 years back?
Yeah, technically it was back into, well, 1996, 7. But for all practical purposes, I'd say 2001 too, because the first 4 or 5 years was just an experiment. That
Right. And how long you've known Anchal?
Okay, so how is it?
He's forgotten.
2006. 2006.
So till 2006, you failed at your attempts to find a person on Shadi.com.
Well, truth is, I didn't want to compete with my customers. So
Come on. Come on.
So I had to, do it the old-fashioned way and fall in love.
Great. Still in love? 3 months down? 2 months down? 1.5 months down.
1.5, 6 weeks.
What's changed in 1.5 months?
Oh, God. What's changed? Nothing. I mean, look, I'm just getting my bearings. The last party for the wedding was last week. So
still under hangover, right?
Exactly. So I think when we wake up is when we'll realize what's changed.
What's changed for you, Anchal?
Just the way Anupam said, we are still, it's just been a month and a half. And the only thing that's changed for me is I can officially tell my parents I'm traveling with Anupam.
So tell me, how has he changed as a person over the last 7 years that you've known him? What changes have you seen in him?
Well, Anupam's been very consistent in the way he is. Of course, physically he's changed a lot. He's become more aware of working out. He's taking care of himself, his health, what he eats. And he dresses up a lot better now. But jokes apart.
And you're responsible for that, right?
Absolutely, 100%. But otherwise, of course, having known Anupam for so many years, I see he's never distracted from work. He's focused at, even after a late night, he says to me he's going to work in the morning. So in that context...
He's a party hard, work hard kind of a person.
Absolutely.
That's how I see him.
Yes.
Is that the right image?
I think this is what drives him. I think he believes in celebrating life, and after a long day's work or after a week of working hard, I believe, for him, Mondays to Fridays is his time of work focus, and on Fridays, if he wants to let his hair down and, go out, make a night out of it, I think it's totally worth the cause, and that's what inspires him and drives him to working harder the following Monday.
Great, excellent. So, Anupam, let's understand this. India has changed a lot. When you came back from the US, there was a notion with which you started Shadi.com, and then I know you changed your business model many times over. And I think we have a whole new generation now, which is coming up, right? Generation in early 20s, which will get married over the next 5 to 10 years. And their notion of the roles of the parents and the role of the way the society is structured, or maybe the way whether they want to get married or not, is substantially changing, right? What are those changes you're seeing in the institution of marriage? What are the insights that you have?
I feel like, firstly, I feel like somebody who's just raised his first round of funding is being asked how to build $1 billion company. So I'm just gotten married myself. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to talk about.
I want to distract you from Anchal a bit.
Okay.
And
that's going to be tough.
Think of your customers now. And you've seen the customer profiles change, the role of parents changing over the last 10 years. If you were to now project in future, how the institution of marriage is going to look like in India. We know that the divorce rates are going up. We know that the women have much larger say now in the way they want to get married and conduct their life. So if you were to think 10 years out now and think about trends, what do you think is happening? Which is substantial? What is not changing? What is very eternally Indian? And what is changing?
No, that's a very relevant question, and I'm not sure that we have time to delve into every detail because it's so philosophical as well. But let me point out a couple of things that we observed and we're seeing. Let's talk about first globally what's happening, or what we see happening, or what I see or observe, and the word renewal and disruption, I think, are very relevant to describe what's happening to marriage as well. I think we need a renewal and a disruption in marriage. So if I had to sort of capture it in one line, I think marriage really universally is growing from sort of a container of love to a vehicle for evolution, right? And while it may have always been the same, it's only now creeping into people's consciousness as that. So to understand where we are going, if you look at where we're coming from, marriage was originally created as communal gatherings to get people together to raise offspring and potentially save the human race from extinction. And over time, we started to expect love out of it, and we created this relationship based on romantic feelings, and it became something everybody had to do, and it became a container, the only container where you could express love, maybe additionally in your family, but not beyond that. And I think that social sort of boundary that has been struggling with individual consciousness over time, where people are starting to ask, wait, why should there be love only in marriage? There's people now talking about, I love my friends. I mean, we've always seen it in self-help groups and so on, but people are going beyond that. And I think there's a discord there. And over time, broadly, I think what will happen, you will see the emergence of new forms of relationship. I'm not saying marriage as an institution is challenged, but I do think that the meaning of marriage will evolve, and we'll see it as a vehicle for evolution. And at the same time, you'll see different types of unions emerge, such as, for example, a relationship where two people are perfectly monogamous with each other, but maybe meet once in 2 weeks or once in a week. I mean, if you have to step back, what is wrong with that, right? As long as it aids your self-evolution. So that's where I see marriage broadly going. Now, if you had to bring it to India, again, India, there is never any definitive answer, right? And that's why we all shake our head, meaning yes or no. And there are several answers. And as far as the connected world is concerned in India, I think that's going the same way, like many of us here, as what I just described as a universal trend. And then you have the other 2 or 3 Indias, which are also evolving, but perhaps at a slightly different pace. And I know in the interest of time, again, we could go on, but I'll just make a quick comment, and that'll give you a sense of how these are also evolving, but perhaps in a different manner. So back in the 80s, right, if you picked up matrimonial newspapers, and they were very large then, and thanks to companies such as ours, they're almost non-existent today. But back then, what people or what men looked for was innocence, right? Looking for an innocent woman. You'll probably never see that anymore. And then you move down to another decade forward, and then there was emphasis on sort of physical attributes, such as tall or pretty North Indian girl, and looking for a 5'10" and above male, and so on. You go forward another sort of 10 years, and the emphasis shifted to double income, sort of seeking a professional. And now, when you look at sort of what people are seeking broadly in India, you find that compatibility is sort of a core attribute that people are seeking. And compatibility can take many forms. It could mean two people's personality, it could mean families, it could mean community, it could mean caste. It can mean various things, because India is very, very layered. And so I think what that movement also suggests is ultimately we will also start seeing this pursuit of self-growth through something like marriage.
Very interesting. So he can you give, you come from a very different career path, right? Can you give us a perspective of how the institution of marriage is evolving in the eyes of young women, right? He gave a perspective from, I think, from a male-centric view. So it'll be interesting to hear from your side. You were in a long relationship, but then you decided to get married, right?
Yes, for sure. Well, of course, our backgrounds are very, very different. The career path, for sure, I come from a fashion background. I am a fashion model, and I've been very independent for the last 15 years. I started working at a very young age. So I knew somewhere down the line I did want to get married. I wanted to find a guy who I could spend the rest of my life with, someone who I'd be happy getting old with. But it wasn't a priority. For me, at maybe 10 years back, the priority was making a name for myself, perhaps a substantial bank balance, and being a girl, I never really felt the pressure which I saw my sisters facing, older sisters. So I think even our family is kind of relaxed. They felt if you are pursuing your career, that was more important than, settling down, because I reached a certain age. So having said that, I still feel, balancing it out, getting married, only when you feel you're ready. And when I say I felt I was ready is when I could happily say I could spend the rest of my life with somebody like Anupam, because I knew he would not stop me from pursuing a career of my choice, whether it's what I was doing now or, doing something else. And of course, growth is very important. It's not just at home in encouraging me to, to perhaps learn, to study. He encourages me to study, to learn. So I think somewhere we all know while growing up, even though you have a career, you've got to settle down, but only on your own terms and conditions. So there's no gun pointed on you that you have to settle down. So I do have a lot of female friends who are single, and though they face society, the pressure from society and from family and from peers, nobody is in a rush, till the time you don't find somebody you think you're compatible with, you're not in a hurry to settle down.
Compatible. So let's shift the conversation to Sharat. So Sharat, you came back a few years back to India to do a startup, right. And I think you're still not at a stage where things have settled down.
Absolutely.
It's very early for you.
Very.
Why did you create another stress point in your life?
Getting married? I actually didn't think about it as a stress point.
You heard the morning conversation about the women talking to VCs?
No, I kind of missed it.
I wanted to talk to you. Why did you get married?
I think, to be honest, all my friends who've been married before, so one of the things was I always wanted to be an entrepreneur since maybe when I was studying, so I was 21, 22. And I think I'd studied a lot about entrepreneurship and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I'm pretty sure I never really focused that much on what it takes to be married. So I was very particular that I first become an entrepreneur and then get married, only because I knew that I needed a person who understands the compatibility of or what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And from 7 to 8 months of being married, I think I can only say that it's not really a stress point. On the contrary, it seems to be helping me tremendously, because as much as Sowmya will hate me saying this, but it really is a distraction from work. When I come back home, I think it's such a huge stress buster for me to take my eyes off work and just stop focusing on work. I think it's still a work in progress. I'm sure she'll disagree that I actually take my eyes or ears off work, but it's actually working in the right direction. So I'm very happy to be married.
And you've known her for a number of years, right?
Well, I've known her for 2 years now. So
right.
I think...
so it's not an arranged marriage, right?
It's not really
not
an
through
arranged marriage.
Shadi.com, right?
No, it's not. It's not. Well, I think if
Well,
you
what
want
do
to be
you
if you want to be on Shaadi.com, I think the first thing is you should add entrepreneur as one of the occupations. I don't think it allows you to add entrepreneur as an occupation. It does?
Ah.
Because it does.
Yeah.
Okay, then it might have changed. Because I know for my sister, out of curiosity, I'd asked my parents because they were looking, and I said, "Would you ever get my sister married to an entrepreneur?" My parents said no. So I always was curious whether someone like a Shaadi.com would actually accept. And I
So
think
let's ask her, why did she decide to marry an entrepreneur?
Well, it honestly wasn't planned again. It wasn't like I wanted to, get married to an entrepreneur. But the one thing about him that, when we were talking and we were dating, that made a huge difference to me is his ambition and his passion is infectious. And that was, those traits reminded me of my father, and those are traits that my father had and has. And I always wanted those traits in someone, my life partner. And that's one of the biggest
So
things.
that's how the compatibility should
I
be
think
done.
she forgot to mention my stunning looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
My father's profile, can it match with my husband's profile?
Yeah, I think
So I think I lucked out there, Rajesh. I think the reason I lucked out there is because, I think entrepreneurship helped in a way, and my education helped me in the other way. See, the thing is, if you need to get married in India, is not only do you have to impress the woman, you need to get in the good books of the parents. So, given that I've been begging investors, begging customers, begging everyone, it's not very difficult to beg a woman, isn't it? So when I lived my days when I lived in the US, whatever, I think I did not master the art of begging, and I think by 2 years of gesoing in being an entrepreneur helped me tremendously in doing that. When it comes to our parents, I think the only thing that helped is my pedigree from IIT. I think the IIT degree has to come to use somewhere, right? So the way it came to use is when you tell your in-laws that you're from IIT, you're like, okay, if this shuts down also, you'll get some job. You'll have some source of income at the end of the day. So I think that made the difference.
Yeah, I think when he met my father first, and when they spoke to each other, I was sure that the two of them were ready to marry each other. Forget me, I was out of the picture. But my dad was also impressed with this whole, because he's got his own entrepreneurial streak, and that's something that he really liked about Sharat. So my parents were like completely smitten way before I was. So that was not an issue at all.
I think my father-in-law was a lot more supportive and excited about me being an entrepreneur than my father ever was. I remember my past life has been, I was an investment banker in New York, and I did that for about 4.5 years. And when I decided to move back, which in retrospection is a great idea given that if I didn't, there are good chances I would have been laid off. But I remember when I was looking to move back, my father said, at least get married and move back. Because this is you're working on Wall Street, I'm sure there'll be a lot of women. Who wants to marry someone when you're sitting out of your apartment and trying to do something? So at least look to get married. And I know when I was dating her, that's the only conversation that was running in my head, because I was like, okay, this is the same conversation I'm going to have with my father-in-law again, or my future father-in-law at that time, saying, I have to convince him that, okay, this is credible and this is good. And I took all data points which to make him convinced that things like the data points that I try to convince investors on why they should invest in Mobstac, same data points to tell them that Mobstac is a very credible company. But what I was fortunate about is, like she said, I have in-laws who are incredibly plugged in. I mean, not only is my father, but even my father-in-law very plugged into who's saying what and who are my competitors and what my investors are saying. So I think at that part I quite lucked out.
Clearly, he's the first rule of marriage. Put out the in-laws and everything else will be fine. He's already got that.
So tell me, these two guys are still in honeymoon period and still in like lovey-dovey.
So are we, yeah, come on. Just because it's been 8 months.
Reality has sunk in of startup life.
I think you should ask that
on you.
On me?
Yeah. I'm sure he's traveling and he's not there, right?
Yeah. He does travel a lot, and I don't get to go along on those trips, but yeah, it's not that bad. I think he primed me enough before when we were dating. Like, he used to keep telling me things like, listen, okay, you might have to skip a few meals. We'll have to have only Maggie and things like that. So I was like, okay. So it's not that bad. I guess he primed me for the worst, but
so he's good at expectation management.
Yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
But the only change, or the only thing that I have to deal with, and I don't know if it's the same case with you, is like your biggest competition is his cell phone. And that is something, like even at 2 o'clock in the night, he'll be checking his email, and it's always work, work, work. But I think I've gotten used to that also now.
You also work, right?
Yes, I do. I do.
What do you do?
I split my time between working for this company, Flow, that connects singles in real life, and IndiaCancer.org, which raises funds for underprivileged cancer patients.
So, in terms of all of you are very ambitious, type A kind of people, very clearly. If you were to sort of now see from where you are, in your next 5 years, 10 years of evolution in your professional career, how do you see it? If you could sort of articulate for us. What do you wake up every day thinking about, what you think about, other than her? You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things to worry about. I'm not at the stage where Anupam is. So I think my biggest challenge to be an entrepreneur and to be in a relationship at the same time, and I can compare this quite well with my days in banking. The thing is, when I did investment banking, I did mergers and acquisitions for Merrill Lynch, and I was very used to working 20 hours a day. I was very used to going home at 3 in the morning, coming back at 8:30, and I did this for 4 years in a stretch. So working hard was not the problem. But I've realized that being an entrepreneur, it's not the number of hours, it's your mind space. Here, the biggest flexibility that you have as an entrepreneur, that you can come back home most of the time at the time that you want. If I want to close and come back at 6, I can. But your mind doesn't shut off. When I was a banker, I could come home at 2 in the morning, but I could sleep like a baby till 7 in the morning and go to work, because I knew once I'm out, I'm out. Here I come back home at 6 o'clock, I'm still thinking about work. 8 o'clock, I'm still thinking about work. 11 o'clock, I'm still thinking about work. So I think when I come back home also, I think the biggest thing that she got used to is she would give me 45 minutes before I can completely unwind, and I just come back to my neutral position of. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of being an entrepreneur.
What's your obsession?
Well, we're just growing. We just started to grow. I think we were just trying to find ourselves to stand up. I think we have stood up and we have started walking. I think over the next couple of months, we'll start a small jog, and hopefully over the next 3 years, we'll be sprinting. So I think we just started what I would say a marathon. We're not even finished a 5K, so it's only going to grow bigger. We are in the presence to expand Mobstac to North America. As a matter of fact, right now I'm spending half my time in New York, which is what is upsetting her the most, because we're looking to open an office in New York. So the travel is going to be crazy. So I think that's something she'll get used to.
I don't think so, actually. He's been really supportive, and I don't think that, of course, there are compromises in any relationship, and but that's the good thing about us. We kind of deal with it very. It's easy. It's not that hard at all. And as I said before, his ambition is so infectious. It's kind of made me want to start something of my own too. So hopefully down the line I'll start something. I haven't really thought of what yet, but I think that's something.
Yeah, that's a great question. I took some time to think about it because the process process that's been running for some time now and getting registered once again, and that happens every few years, and so it's getting to that kind of end. So we're just curious, last couple of years. Fortunately, unfortunately, we've ended up with two different companies now because some are not going to partner so well. But India is just not growing as far as the business is concerned, and we can look for growth in other avenues in the sea of the companies. Now, all the companies really Sharat.com, Mobstac,
Their own sort of management team.
and as you're aware, very well Asian investing, about 25, 30 companies now. And some exits this year, which is wonderful. So all these thoughts are kind of going through the head now, and starting to think about where choosing to do something is one thing, right? You can choose to keep busy in 20 different ways. I think the biggest question for me personally is where can I have the most impact, right? And that's a question that I'm trying to answer. And I haven't found the answer yet, but
Thank you very much for taking your time.
Thank you.
I've been to all of them so far, so
I want to invite, thank you very much, two fantastic entrepreneurs, Murgu and Dinesh, to come on stage.